Hey guys, Man here, and we're doing another modern meta breakdown video, and you can see he's hanging out on my extra playmats right now. So we've been bouncing around, seeing lots of different decks, tried to do a little bit more current or decks that you'll see quite often in the meta, and then maybe some more fringy lists and stuff like that. So again, we've been bouncing around doing lots of different decks over these coming last couple of weeks here. The two most recent ones that we did was Merfolk and Amulet Titan. Before that, of course, 8-Rack, Red Green Ponza. We did Eldrazi Tron, Bant Eldrazi, Pure Steel Paladin, Gifts Storm, Abzan Company, Kiki Cord, Lantern Control, the Sun and Moon list, Death Shadow, Jund, Abzan, that sort of stuff. So this week I figured we'd do a little bit more fringy. A fun deck to play for some, others hate the deck, which seems to be a theme with some of the decks that we talk about here. So why don't we jump into it and get some discussion going about what the deck is, why people are playing it, stuff like that. So that's the wrong one. This is the one. Here we go. Soul Sisters, guys. So why is it called Soul Sisters? Well, we've got two cards here, Soul Warden and Soul's Attendant. They're 1-drops, 1/1. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you gain a life. Simple and easy. So that includes your opponent's creatures as well. So nice little nuance with that there, that you can gain life off of your creatures, your opponent's creatures. So the deck is, at the fundamental level, a life gain deck. Which I know is a big thing for a lot of people that get into Magic and playing kitchen table and stuff like that, and you're like, man, gaining life is great. And in a sense it is, because you can make your guys really big by gaining life in this deck, but you have to be aware of the other strategies out there that don't care how much life you have. So the plan is to get a Soul Warden, Soul Attendant down initially, and then you're going to follow it up with basically some ways to kind of help interact with that life gain you're getting. Ajani's Pridemate is a great follow-up there. Of course, costs 2. Whenever you gain life, you get to put +1 counter on him. So, hey, I'm playing Ajani's Pridemate. I have a Soul Warden out. Trigger, gain a life, get a +1 counter. Simple, easy. You've also got your Sarah Ascendant, which Pridemate and Ascendant are tried and true, consistent across Soul Sister lists that you're going to see. Costs 1 for 1/1 with lifelink. Cool, doesn't seem that exciting for it, but if you have 30 or more life, he gets +5/+5 and flying. So if you have your Soul Wardens, your Soul Attendants out, it's pretty easy to gain life and be set up in a nice position. Get this guy to be really big really quickly. And again, they're low drops, so our Ranger here works out really well with this deck, because you see we've got so many 1-drops there, at least 12 set up there with our Ascendants, our Warden, and Attendant there. So Ranger Vios, 3/2, when you enter the battlefield, search your library for 2 creatures with converted mana cost 1 or less, reveal them, add them to your hand. So you can be like, well, hey, I need a way to get my beater here, sweet, Sarah Ascendant, or I need to start reassembling stuff, I'll get a Warden and an Attendant there, kind of thing. So you do have that aspect. You see kind of full play sets amongst these guys, as well as the Pridemate. The next 2 cards that we're going to talk about are more flexibility in being in the main board. You can choose to build it how you want, essentially, if you really want the full amount in here or not. But the more creatures you play, the better this deck functions, because of the Soul Warden, Soul's Attendant, stuff like that. So this is more of a meta call. Our champion here costs 2 for 1/1. Human Cleric, protection from black and red, and whenever another creature comes into play, you gain a life. So same thing as Soul Warden, Soul Attendant, but he basically is saying, hey, I'm going to shut down that Death Shadow that might be running around causing some problems, because I've got protection from black. And what is the most common removal amongst the Jund stuff? Lightning Bolt, Terminates, Fatal Push. Guess what? Get arounds all those. Doesn't have to worry about it. So he's a nice kind of meta call. and good choice to add in. You see them sometimes in token lists and stuff like that, but definitely something worth having in this list here for the meta. Archangel of Thune is the other finisher, because it's sometimes hard to just rely on our Pride Mate, to rely on our Sarah Ascendant. This basically can make yourself be able to go wide instead of having that pierce strategy that is normally set up with a Pride Mate with an Ascendant. So for those that aren't familiar, Archangel of Thune, 3/4 flying, lifelink. Whenever you gain life, put a +1 counter on each of your creatures. So you can swing in, pump your guys up off of her lifelink, or hey, enter the battlefield from another creature, Soul Warden, Soul Attendants, our champion there. Guess what? Everybody gets buffed up, and then you have a pretty wide strategy. So I really like that addition for it, and giving yourself that flexibility to switch up and not just be pure style, which a lot of the decks might be designed for. And again, this is a mono white Soul Sisters. There is another version which we'll talk about. You see it is, I say mono white. The sideboard does allow it to switch because he's decided, you know what, Sacred Foundry, we'll keep the 3 in there for specific sideboard, but the main completely mono white here. Brave the Elements, protection from a color of your choice, works out great. White creatures you control gain protection from the chosen color until end of turn. So basically a blanket effect for your creatures there. Path to Exile, Spectral Possession. Hey, here's some evasion. I'm going to pay 3 mana, be able to make 3 spirits, gain 3 life off of that. So nice addition in there. Sideboard, Aven Mind Sensor kind of help you out against certain decks. A lot of people are searching their library, so having that in there, it's an extra creature, more evasion. You know, the normal stuff we'd expect to see, Rest in Peace, Stony Silence. So Suppression Field I love as a card. Don't see it very much. Sometimes you'll see it in a Boggles deck, which we haven't talked about yet, so we'll save that for them. But activated abilities cost 2 more to play unless they're mana abilities. Fetching, Planeswalkers, you know, things like that are going to be costing 2 more to be able to activate. Disenchant, again, just solid stuff. Thalia here. So if you need to shave out your Spectral Possessions kind of thing, your opponent is casting a lot more spells, add those guys in there. You got a 3 in there. But the Blood Moon in here is a nice choice because you have so many planes, 14 planes. If you're playing against those 3-color decks and stuff like that, you have the extra hate that you can bring in for it. But it's a relatively cheap deck for the most part. Some of the stuff are a little bit more expensive, but the main stuff is pretty cheap there. So definitely something to consider if you're looking to get into Modern. You like life gain, you like that sort of aspect of it, and there's a different twist that you can go if you're like, you know what, Mono White's not really my thing. Like, it's cool and all, but there's another way that we can play this. So we're going to take a look at a second variant, if you will, of Soul Sisters. And that's our red-white list. I hadn't found any like super up-to-date ones on Star City. But TCG Player did States in March. And this one did take 8th place in Pennsylvania, which is sweet. And I know some people that are trying out the red-white variant of it. So not only do you have your Soul Warden, your Soul Attendant, just like you would for Soul Sisters, you've got your Pride Mate here. Sweet, cool. This one is a little bit lower to the ground, more aggressive. You can see it's got Champion of the Parish here. Whenever another human enters, you got to put a +1 counter on him. Guess what? Our Attendant, our Warden are also humans. Our Ranger, also human there. So again, Ranger works out well. We've got Legion Loyalists. Of course, when you have your battalion go off, you have to be attacking with at least 2 other creatures and Legion Loyalists. All of your attacking creatures get first strike and trample until the end of turn. So it can be relevant with your like Pride Mate and stuff like that. But the big draw to playing red, and it's not Legion Loyalists, big surprise there. Hi, Addie. It's actually Norn the Wary here. So 2/1, 1 cost, so you can find him off of Ranger. He is a legendary creature, but that's not that big a deal. You really want to make sure you have him, so playset works out fine for this. Whenever a player plays a spell or a creature attacks, you get to remove him and return him to battlefield under your control, or sorry, owner's control, at the end of turn there. So this basically is saying, hey, I can attack with him. He's also a human, so it works with our champion, that nice little pair. Remember, enters the battlefield. Well, he's constantly entering the battlefield and leaving the battlefield, so you'll get additional triggers building him up. You will also be getting additional triggers anytime a creature enters the battlefield, gaining life off it. So again, that nice little combo set up here. You also are running Perforos. Some like it, some don't. I mean, I think it's smart for this because of that flicker effect. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, Perforos deals 2 damage to each opponent. So it's basically saying, hey, I've got my life gain here. I've got some extra damage coming at you from this. And by playing red, I have access to some burn spells. Lightning Bolts, Boros Charm, things like that. Return to the Ranks is a nice twist. You can add in 2 or less is a lot of your creatures. Pretty much it's set up that Perforos and Ranger Vios are the only ones that are above the 2 cost for Return to the Ranks. So that's a nice little, in case you're playing against some board wipes, stuff like that, just a nice little save, essentially, for later on. You know, maybe push for some damage off the Perforos to just kill somebody in 1 turn. So, because again, Perforos is indestructible there. But Norn also has a nice little combo effect, essentially, with Genesis Chamber. And the main reason that you'll want to run the red version is having Genesis Chamber. Let me scroll down a little bit so you guys can see. Genesis Chamber and Norn. So whenever a non-token creature comes into play, hey, guess what? Norn's constantly flickering in and out. So whenever he comes into play, or any other creature, you get to put a 1/1 mirror artifact creature token into play. So basically says, I'm going to make a bunch of guys off of this every single turn. Gain life off of my Soul Ward and Soul's Attendants, and deal damage with my Perforos there. Great little kind of drain effects set up for this deck. Also able to run mainboard Blood Moons and hate people out here. So the list can be a little bit more expensive. As you can see, a playset of Norn is about $30 there. So do keep that in mind. Blood Moon is around $39 there. But Cavern of Souls is in this list. You don't have to, like we saw the regular Soul Sisters run it, but if you're going for the more budget, you don't have to go for that route kind of thing. But it does have more hate available to it. Ghost Quarters in here. We've got our fast lands, Inspiring Vantage, Mountain, Plains. You of course need some sort of basics in there because all of these other lands essentially just become mountains once you have your Blood Moon. But you see only 2 in there, so knowing what the meta's like, it's just a nice little addition. By running red, of course, you do get access to additional sideboard stuff. We see like Wear and Tear is in there, Electrickery there. You know, you can overload that, deal 1 damage to each creature your opponent controls. Deflecting Palm is another option for it, but the normal white stuff that you'd expect to see. Thalia, Stony Silence, we got an additional Return to the Ranks, Rest in Peace is in there. There's our champion. Ghostly Prison. So this basically says, if I need to and playing against aggressive decks, I can basically change gears and turn into like a prison deck and just rely on my drain and gain effects from Perforos, from Norn, from Genesis Chamber, from the Soul's Attendant, Soul Wardens to be set up nicely. So yeah, it's definitely a fun deck to be playing. Something that I hope you guys have learned about, heard about going forward here, because it is a different style of playing. And if you go to bigger events, you will see it. Maybe at your local shop, you might see 1 person run it. From time to time at our shop, we'll have somebody that picks it up and plays it for maybe a couple weeks and then puts it away for a while. So it definitely is something to keep in mind if you want something a little bit different, a little bit more casual in mindset, but still competitive in the cards that are available to it. Like if you want the more combo style, go red-white. If you want more just kind of straight up, hey, I'm going to either pierce you to death with this one creature or go wide with my Archangel Thune, that's another way to do it. So I wanted to showcase other creature-based decks that you can play in Modern besides Merfolk, because that was one of our recent videos that we did. So you know, take this in mind when you're thinking about building new decks as a kind of fun of deck to be able to pick up and pilot. But that's going to do it for this week's edition of Modern Meta Breakdown. I hope you guys have been enjoying the series so far. We've been showcasing so many different decks, and there's still so many more to talk about. We have, again, these fringe lists that we're talking about, as well as the really popular ones. So lots of great content coming forward for you guys to be able to enjoy. But if there are other decks that you'd like to talk about, you know, make sure you let us know in chat, in the descriptions, all that kind of good stuff there. You hit us up and say, oh, why don't you talk about this deck? I haven't heard many people talk about this one right now. Can you fill me in on what's going on with that? And you know, we'll be happy to do that. I do want to say to Mitchell, who left a comment on our last video, because I was talking about Sam Black's list, but he was playing Team Unified event, or a team constructed event, so his deck building was a little bit more limited and constrained, and that is also a big reason why his deck list was so different than some of the more consistent lists that we've seen. So shout out to Mitchell for helping us out and trying to make everybody else a little bit more knowledgeable, a little bit more prepared going forward for that Amulet Titan stuff. But that's it for Soul Sisters tonight, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next game.